going to be talking about lazy eights. What is a lazy eight? So it's a performance maneuver that includes two 180-degree turns while you're climbing and descending, and your pitch and your bank are always changing. So pretty much it looks like just like that, pretty much. Why we do this, it'll improve your piloting skills because, as I said, your control inputs are always changing, and while you're constantly changing your controls, you're going to have to be referencing your outside points and everything inside the plane as well. So that was the what and the why. We're going to go over how you do it, some common errors with it, and then we're going to cover the check ride standards for it. So we're going to come over here and just watch a really quick video. Okay, so here they're starting the maneuver, and now they're doing their first turn. Here's the 45 point, and they're hitting the 90, and then we get to the 135, and they're gonna bring it back up. So I said that a little fast, but pretty much it's that simple, but there's a lot more to it than just that. So pretty much this is not a fast maneuver at all. That's why it's called the lazy eight. A lot of people have a tendency to rush it, and you don't want to do that. So first, I'll explain what I have up here. So here, there's the entry, the 45-degree point, the 90-degree point, 135, and then 180. So I'll explain that in a second, but this is just kind of the setup for it. Here's another diagram just to kind of explain it in a different way, and then the steps for it, and then our common errors. So what you want to start with before you even get into it is your pre-maneuver setup. So that includes your two 90-degree clearing turns, and then your fuel selector both, mixture unrich, and your landing light is on. Next, you want to ensure that you're going to be above 1,500 feet AGL for the entire portion of the maneuver. After that, you're going to set your power at approximately 2220 RPMs. It's usually around 2200 to 2300. It's different depending on the day. And you set the power at around 95 knots. And then once you do that, you have a constant power setting. So once you get that set up, you can't touch the power at all. So once you do that, you want to tighten the control lock so the throttle won't move on its own at all. After you do all of that, you're going to pick your reference points, and that's where this stuff comes in. So when you're sitting outside, when you're sitting in the plane and you look outside, you're going to pick a 45 point, a 90 point, and a 135 point. So I have a picture pulled up from one that I took in the plane. Okay, so here, let's talk about some good reference points you can pick. In Traverse City, we have a bunch of lakes. You can see here in the background, we have East Bay and West Bay. So a lake is a good reference point to pick. You can also pick a road. See that little road right there for like a 90-degree point? So say that this is what I'm looking at outside. I'll pick my points. So I would probably use the top of this lake over here for the 45-degree point if I'm gonna start going to the right. Maybe a little bit more up. For a 90-degree point, I would pick this side of the bay, and then, or even this road right here. And then for my 135 point, I would pick the end of this bay. So pretty much with that, while you're doing the maneuver, you want to look outside and reference each of those points when you hit them. So when you get to each of those points, there's a certain setup you have to have for each one. So I'll grab the plane for this. So at your entry point, you're going to start with a level bank and a level pitch. So just like a normal straight cruise flight. Once you get to the 45-degree point, you're going to want 15 degrees of bank, and that's where you're going to have your max pitch up. So 45, 15-degree bank, max pitch up. When you get to your 90 point, you're going to increase your bank and decrease your pitch. And right then, you're going to cut through the horizon and bring it down like this if you're going to the right. And then at your 135, you're going to want 15 degrees of bank again, and you're going to have your max pitch down. So like this, and then from there, you're going to bring it up. I kind of skipped the 90, so between the 45 to 90, your bank is going to be increasing. So your bank is constantly increasing for the first quarter of the maneuver, I would say, because you do 2 turns. For that second quarter, your bank is going to constantly be decreasing. It's kind of complicated, but the more times you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So let's see. Do you guys have any questions about that? It is complicated.
What's the, for your pitch level, max up 10 to 15 and then max down
Right.
10? What's that?
Okay, so once you're at your 45-degree point, as I said, your bank is going to be 15 degrees. So 15-degree bank, and your pitch is going to be your max up while you're at your 45-degree point. So when you're looking inside of the G1000, for your max pitch up, it's going to be between the 10 and 15 line. I have a picture of that.
And you have gauges inside to tell you what level you're at.
Yep. Attitude indicator. So it's when your max pitch up is going to be between the 10 and 15. Okay. Then when you're at your 90-degree point, as I said, your bank is going to constantly be increasing for this first half of it. So you get to your 90 and you're going to have your max bank, which is 30 degrees, and your pitch will be level. So instead of up like this, it's going to be level. Then once you get to the 135, that's when you start decreasing your bank again, and you're going to have your max pitch down. And your max pitch down is going to be around the 10 area. It's important that you get down to this because you want to start and end at the same altitude. Then you get to your 180-degree point and you're going to be back where you started. So your pitch is level and your bank is level. Okay, now we're going to talk about some errors with this maneuver. So first of all, it's a visual maneuver. So you want to be cross-referencing with your instruments inside and looking outside of the plane. That's important. Also, another way to know when you're at the 45, 90, and 135, say you start on a heading of, we'll say east. So you're starting on a heading of east and you're going to the right first. When you're between east and north, so you're east. Oh yeah, right, okay. So you're on the east, when you're at the 45-degree point, you're gonna be between east and south. When you're at the 90-degree point, your heading is gonna be to the south. When you're at the 135 point, you're gonna be between the south and the west. And then once you get to this point, you're gonna be facing the west. And so once all of that is done, you're gonna do it again in the opposite direction. So we started with going to the right first. So once you get to this point over here, then you're gonna do all of this again, but going to the left that time. So you're gonna end up back on your east heading once the maneuver is completely finished. Okay, so visual, you wanna look outside for your points, and you can reference inside with your different directions you're facing. Coordination is another big thing. So during your right turn, you're gonna need a lot more right rudder, because as we've talked about previously, all of the turning tendencies for this plane are to the left. So you're especially gonna need more right rudder in the beginning of your maneuver when you're pitching up and your airspeed's getting really slow. So lots of right rudder for that. And then next, you wanna make sure you're comfortable with the maneuver. You wanna chair fly before you go out and do it, because if you get up in the plane without reviewing any of this information, you're gonna get up there and be super behind the airplane and you won't be able to do the maneuver.
What's chair fly?
Chair flying is just like sitting in your seat. I close my eyes and I pretend I'm with the throttle and with the yoke, and then in this case it's just the yoke. So I sit there and I say to myself when I'm starting the maneuver, I say, okay, pitch up and bank, pitch up and bank, pitch up and bank, and I'll repeat that in my head until I get to the next part of the maneuver. And then so once I get to the 45 in my head, I would say increase bank, decrease pitch, and I'd be really dramatic with my motions, so I know that I'm doing the right thing. Next is the gain or loss of altitude. So at each of these points, you want to be at the same altitude that you started at in the maneuver. So here you're going to be climbing, and here you're going to be descending. As I said before, you want to make sure you get that 10 pitch down, so you get down far enough to get to that entry altitude. Next is the fall through the horizon when you're at the 90-degree point. So that usually happens pretty quick, so you want to make sure that you're on top of that and you have control over it while it's happening. And then last, during the maneuver, you also have to scan for traffic on top of all of that stuff that's already going on. Any questions?
What if you're not at the same altitude when you are done with it?
Perfect. That brings us into the next thing. So, the check ride standards from the ACS. So this is what you're held to when you're with your examiner during your flight. So your question, say you weren't at your entry altitude when you finished the maneuver. You have, you're allowed plus or minus 100 feet from your entry altitude when you're done. So if I started at 3,000 feet and when I was completely done with both of my turns for the maneuver and I was at 3,080 feet, I would still technically be within standards. Also, you have airspeed, so you have plus or minus 10 knots from your entry airspeed, which was 95 knots. So another note with that, as you go through this maneuver, as you're pitching up, your airspeed's going to be decreasing. Then once you're going for your max pitch down, your airspeed is going to be increasing dramatically. So as long as you end at the same airspeed, or plus or minus 10 from your entry airspeed, you're going to be okay. And then heading, plus or minus 10. So you started on your east heading, and then you go to your west, and then eventually you'll be back to your east. So again, it's just plus or minus 10 either direction of that. And then the last thing, you want to make sure all of your reference points are correct. So when you're at your 45-degree reference point, you want to make sure you have your 15 degrees of bank and you're at your max pitch up. When you get to your 90-degree point, you want to have 30 degrees of bank and level pitch. When you get to your 135, you're going to have 15 degrees of bank and your max pitch down. So you want to make sure you hit each of those points to ensure that the maneuver is done correctly. You guys have any other questions? So this seems like a lot of stuff for
Sounds scary.
a lot of stuff for no reason. Doing this pretty much just ensures that you have control of the aircraft at all times, and you want to be able to prove to someone else that you know your aircraft inside and out and you can control every aspect of the maneuver. So that's the importance of it. Okay, that's all.